TIFU dressing up as Harry Potter to please my GF during sex. My GF is a hardcore Harry Potter fan. Or at least she used to be. I remember during the honeymoon phase of our relationship, she mentioned one of her fantasies was a Harry Potter roleplay situation where she was a professor at Hogwarts that ends up being seduced by one of her students. I didn't know what to do with that information at the time, but I thought it was funny and I never forgot about it. Less than 2 years later, I decided to bring out my inner wizard and figure out how to fulfill the fantasy my GF always wanted. After completing my Harry Potter research, aka rewatching the movies, I called my GF a few days ago and encouraged her to play along and avoid asking questions when she came over that evening. That was it. No spoilers. When my GF showed up at my flat, I was standing in the lounge wearing a Harry Potter costume and pointing a wand at her. She laughed. I referred to my GF as Professor and asked her if she remembered that spell she taught me during dark arts class that paralyzed people. My GF was still laughing, but she eventually nodded in response to my question. I waved my wand and shouted Petrificus Totalis. My GF struggled to stop laughing, but she managed to get into character and freeze instantly, as per my spell. I literally picked up my motionless GF and put her down on the couch. I proceeded to undress my GF while telling her how much I've always wanted to sleep with a mudblood and pump her full of pure blood seed. Not gonna lie, I cringed on the inside when I delivered that line because it sounded silly. But then again, I could tell my GF was turned on when I removed her underwear. It was working. When I was done going down on my GF, I waved my wand between her legs and said unimpregnate. I made her aware that I was gonna penetrate her without protection and my made-up spell would prevent her from becoming a mudblood MILF. I unzipped my pants and banged my GF in my wizard uniform. She forgot she was under my paralysis spell and broke character a few times when she moaned and moved her body, but at that point we were both past the point of controlling ourselves and just did whatever felt good. The two of us came really hard. Based on the outcome, I knew my GF enjoyed what I did. However, post-nut clarity left her with mixed feelings afterwards. My GF said the fantasy was hot when it happened and she appreciated my effort. But replaying it in her head made her feel like we were acting too much like children to get ourselves off, and that was kind of giving her the ick. She never said it in so many words, but I sensed that she was low-key trying to tell me that she outgrew her Harry Potter fantasy and I was probably too late. Instead of letting it go and moving on, I revisited the topic last night, almost a week since the fantasy. I decided to ask my GF what I could do differently in case I wanted to surprise her with a sequel. My GF sighed and said I could just copy and paste what her ex-BF did. She paused mid-sentence and looked at me like she suddenly realized she said something bad. Against my better judgment, I encouraged my GF to finish her sentence. She said she didn't really care about Harry Potter prior to meeting her ex, who was the Og Potter fan apparently. She said his nerdy obsession with Harry Potter was endearing. I asked, "How endearing?" My GF dodged my question and said I should focus on the fact that she enjoyed the version of her fantasy one created. I asked what was her ex's version. My GF said if you really want to know. Before telling me that her ex enjoyed playing the role of a Quidditch captain who ends up missing the game and losing the tournament because he was balls deep inside his wizard GF. She said it was unexpectedly hot because her ex pretended to be reluctant and submissive whereas she had to be distracting and dominant, which was new for her. She said she didn't know she could squirt until she dominated her ex. I said I didn't know she could squirt until now. My GF awkwardly laughed it off and said I should be grateful I've never made her squirt because she always hated the clean-up. I asked my GF why she would plant the seed of a Harry Potter roleplay fantasy at the beginning of our relationship if her ex already did a better job. She rolled her eyes at me saying better job and said she was still somewhat high on her ex during our first few dates and wanted to recapture the same magic from her previous relationship, but she eventually fell in love with me and forgot about her ex and his Harry Potter BS. Until recently when she saw me in my Harry Potter costume, which automatically made her think of her ex. I should have stopped asking questions, but for some reason I couldn't. I asked my GF if she was turned on during the fantasy roleplay because she saw me in the Harry Potter costume or her ex. She said nothing. I asked if the ick she was feeling afterwards was not really the ick, but the guilt of knowing she was thinking of someone else fulfilling her fantasy instead of me. My GF said she was gonna go and she did. I didn't stop her. Now she's not responding to my messages or my calls. TLDR dressed up as Harry Potter to fulfill a sexual fantasy my GF had at the beginning of our relationship. But I accidentally made her remember how much better that fantasy was when her ex was Harry Potter and not me. Now my relationship is no longer in a good place.